Dobro. History. Archive.
Let's dive into the incredible story of a space mission that set out for the moon, but, completely by accident, ended up making its most important discovery by looking back at where it came from. This single sentence from the astronaut who took one of history's most iconic photographs, it just says it all, doesn't it? It perfectly captures the profound and beautiful irony of the Apollo 8 mission. They journeyed to another world, only to truly see their own for the very first time. So, how did this happen? How did a desperate roll of the dice, aimed at a dead rock in space, completely reshape how we see our own living, breathing world? Well, to answer that, we have to go back to one of the most chaotic and turbulent years in modern history. A year that was just crying out for a miracle. Yeah, the story of Apollo 8, it doesn't start with some grand, noble inspiration. Nope, it begins with sheer, unfiltered desperation, forged in the crucible that was 1968. 1968 was a year of relentless trauma. It was just one gut punch after another. You had the Tet Offensive shattering any remaining public trust in the Vietnam War. Then the assassinations of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert F. Kennedy. The country just felt fractured, exhausted, and cynical. By the end of that year, America was in desperate need of a win. And if all that wasn't enough pressure, CIA intelligence was screaming that the Soviets were about to beat America in the race to the moon. Their Zond program had already sent tortoises on a round trip and brought them back alive. To NASA, it looked like a Soviet cosmonaut could be orbiting the moon within weeks. But NASA had this massive problem. The one piece of hardware they absolutely needed to practice for a landing, the lunar module, just wasn't ready. It was overweight, full of bugs, months and months behind schedule. The entire Apollo program was grinding to a halt. So, in this moment of just audacious desperation, a NASA manager named George Low proposed a pivot that changed history. He basically said, forget the Earth orbit test, forget waiting for the lunar module, let's go to the moon now with just the command capsule. It was an absolutely high-risk, high-reward gamble. Okay, so they had a new plan, but launching this mission meant trusting 3 men to a machine that, on its last unmanned flight, had literally tried to tear itself apart. You see, the Saturn V rocket, the most powerful machine ever built, had this potentially fatal flaw called pogo oscillation. And yeah, it's kind of like a pogo stick bouncing completely out of control. It was a vibration so violent that on the previous test flight, it shook the rocket with forces that would have instantly disabled a human crew. We're talking forces that nobody could survive. The engineering solution they came up with was just brilliant. It was so elegant. To stop these crazy vibrations, they created what was essentially a gas-filled shock absorber inside the engine's plumbing. By injecting helium gas, they could cushion the violent pressure waves and break up that deadly resonance. This wasn't just a technical patch. This was a testament to NASA's culture of rapid, ingenious problem-solving under impossible pressure. And honestly, it was the fix that made the entire mission possible. But even with the pogo fix, the ride to orbit was, it was a physical assault. As the first stage burned out and the second one kicked in, the crew was thrown forward and then slammed back into their seats with such incredible force. It was this brutal, constant reminder of the colossal power they were strapped to. So they survived the launch. Now they're hurtling towards the moon, faster than any humans had ever gone before, and facing the harsh realities of deep space. And then came the most critical moment of the entire flight. They disappeared behind the moon. For 34 long minutes, they were utterly, completely alone. Total radio silence. Their survival depended on a single engine firing perfectly. If it failed, they could have been flung into orbit around the sun forever. After a perfect burn, they swung around and got their first view of the destination they had risked everything for. And it was kind of underwhelming. The heroic moon of songs and poems was, in reality, just this colorless, sterile wasteland. It wasn't majestic at all. It was just a battered, gray expanse. There was no color, no variation, just different shades of gray against a perfectly black sky. The commander, Frank Borman, he saw it as just a forbidding expanse of nothing. So you have to imagine this sensory deprivation, this endless, monochromatic landscape. It really set the stage for the visual shock that was about to happen next. So let's get to the moment that changed everything.
An event so profound it completely redefined the mission, and incredibly, it wasn't even in the flight plan.
The moment of discovery was just beautifully chaotic and human. As the spacecraft rolled, the Earth suddenly popped up over the lunar horizon. And you can just hear the crew scrambling. Borman is jokingly griping about the schedule, while Anders is desperately calling for a roll of color film to capture this unplanned, absolutely breathtaking sight. And the photograph they took, wow, it was a revelation. For the very first time, humanity saw itself not as a map of competing countries, but as a single, fragile, vibrant system of blue and white, just hanging there in the vast, silent darkness.
You know, the experience gave the crew this profound shift in perspective. Jim Lovell realized he could just put his thumb up to the window and completely blot out the entire planet, everything and everyone he had ever known, right behind his thumb. It was a powerful lesson in both the scale of humanity and its incredible fragility.
So, when the mission returned to Earth, they brought back more than just data and photos. They brought back a new perspective and a message that resonated around a globe that desperately, desperately needed it. On Christmas Eve, the crew famously read the opening verses of Genesis to about 1 billion people, and while it was a moment of immense unity for many, it also prompted a lawsuit from an atheist activist. And get this, that lawsuit had a direct chilling effect. Just 7 months later, when Buzz Aldrin wanted to take communion on the moon, he had to do it in private, in radio silence. So you see, this mission did so much more than just beat the Russians to the moon. It delivered a moment of hope that, as one simple telegram to the commander put it, saved 1968. And that iconic Earthrise photo? It became a symbol for the modern environmental movement, giving us that powerful concept of Spaceship Earth. Ultimately, the legacy of Apollo 8 is this powerful question for all of us. It proved that sometimes the greatest discoveries aren't found by looking at something new, but by gaining a new perspective on what we've known all along. So it makes you wonder, right? What familiar problem in your world could be solved just by looking at it from a completely different angle?